Staff Sergeant Tae-ho Kim wiped the sweat from his brow as he walked through the dry, dusty land of Nexus 7. The hot sun beat down on him and his squad. They had been on patrol for 6 hours now. 2 more hours to go, Tae-ho said to himself. He checked his gun and kept walking. Nexus 7 was not a nice place to be stationed. It was far from Earth, hot during the day, cold at night, and very boring. Nothing ever happened here. Most soldiers hated being sent here, but not Tae-ho. He liked the quiet. It gave him time to think. "Movement at 2 o'clock, said Jun, the youngest member of the squad. His voice was tight with worry. Tae-ho raised his hand, and the squad stopped. He pulled out his field glasses and looked where Jun had pointed. At first, he saw nothing. Then, a flash of metal caught his eye. "Take cover," Tae-ho shouted just as the first shots rang out. The squad dived behind rocks as energy blasts hit the ground around them. Dirt and stone flew into the air. "Voidborn raiders," yelled Captain Da, their leader. "Return fire." The squad began to shoot back at the attackers. Voidborn raiders were known throughout the galaxy as dangerous fighters. They attacked small outposts, stole what they could, and killed anyone in their way. Tae-ho fired his weapon, hitting one of the raiders. But there were many more. Too many. "We're outnumbered," Jun cried out. Fear was clear in his voice. A blast hit near Captain Da. He fell to the ground, not moving. "Captain's down," someone shouted. Tae-ho looked around. The other soldiers looked scared. With the captain down, they had no leader. Without thinking, Tae-ho took charge. "Min and Jun, give covering fire. Subin, check the captain. Everyone else, fall back to those large rocks." Tae-ho pointed to a better position about 50 meters behind them. The squad moved quickly, following his orders. Tae-ho helped Subin drag the wounded captain to safety. "He's alive, but badly hurt," Subin said. Tae-ho nodded. "Keep him safe." He turned to the others. "We can't win this fight. We need to get back to base and bring help." "How?" asked Min. "They have us surrounded." Tae-ho looked at the land around them. His mind worked fast. "See that narrow pass between the hills? Raiders won't expect us to go that way because it's so open. But if we set up smoke grenades here and sonic distractors on the other side, they'll think we're trying to break through there." The squad looked at him with doubt in their eyes. "Trust me," Tae-ho said firmly. They did as he ordered. When everything was ready, Tae-ho gave the signal. Smoke filled the air on one side of their position. Sonic distractors made sounds of gunfire on the other side. "Now," Tae-ho shouted. The squad ran for the narrow pass, carrying the captain. Just as Tae-ho had guessed, the raiders had moved to the areas with smoke and noise. The pass was clear. They ran hard, not stopping until they reached the next ridge. From there, they could see their base in the distance. "We made it," Jun said, surprise in his voice. "Not yet," Tae-ho replied. "But we will." 2 hours later, they arrived at the base. Medical teams took the captain. The squad was safe. What Tae-ho didn't know was that someone had been watching. High above the planet, hidden by advanced technology, a royal ship had seen everything. Inside, Princess Era of the Celestial Empire watched the recording again. "Interesting," she said, her silver eyes fixed on the image of Tae-ho. "This human showed quick thinking and courage. My people believe humans lack these traits." "It is just one human, Your Highness," said her advisor. "A rare case, perhaps." The princess smiled. "Or perhaps we have been wrong about humans." She tapped a long finger against her chair. "I want to know more about this soldier." "As you wish, Your Highness." Princess Era continued to watch Tae-ho on the screen. "Yes, I want to know much more about this human." 2 weeks after the raid, Tae-ho sat cleaning his gun in the barracks. Life had returned to normal at the outpost. Captain Dai was healing well in the medical bay. The other soldiers now looked at Tae-ho with new respect, but he didn't care much for it. Staff Sergeant Kim, a young officer, stood at the door. "You're wanted at headquarters. Right away." Tai-ho frowned. "Did they say why?" "No, sir. Just that it's urgent." The walk to headquarters was short but hot under the two suns of Nexus 7. When Tai-ho arrived, he was surprised to see not just his base commander, but also 3 high-ranking Galactic Defense Force officers. "Staff Sergeant Kim, reporting as ordered, sir," Tai-ho said, standing at attention. Base Commander Park looked uncomfortable. "At ease, Kim. We have a situation." One of the GDF officers, a stern-faced woman with gray hair, stepped forward. "I am General Yu. 2 days ago, we received a communication from the Celestial Empire." Tai-ho's eyes widened. Everyone knew about the Celestials. They were the most advanced species in the galaxy. They rarely spoke to humans, seeing them as far below their level. "The Celestials?" Tai-ho asked. "What do they want with me?" "They're here now," Commander Park said, pointing to a door. "And they asked for you by name." The door slid open, and Tai-ho felt his breath catch. 3 tall figures entered the room. They had pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were large and silver, without pupils. They moved with perfect grace, as if gravity barely affected them. The Celestial in the middle wore robes of shimmering material that changed color with each movement. The other 2 wore simple white uniforms. "This is Ambassador Lee from the Celestial Empire," General Yu said. The ambassador looked at Tai-ho with cold interest. "So this is the human soldier." Tai-ho stood straight, feeling like a bug under a microscope. "Staff Sergeant Kim," Commander Park said, 2 weeks ago, your patrol was observed by a Celestial Royal Scout ship. Your actions during the raid caught the attention of someone important." Ambassador Lee held up a small device. A hologram appeared, showing Tai-ho during the raid, giving orders and leading his squad to safety. "Princess Era of the Royal House of the Celestial Empire was most impressed by your display," the ambassador said. His voice had an odd musical quality. "She has issued a royal decree." The ambassador handed a crystal tablet to General Yu, who read it with a pale face. "What does it say?" Tai-ho asked, a feeling of dread growing in his stomach. General Yu looked up. "Princess Era has selected you as her cultural exchange specimen." "Her what?" Tai-ho couldn't believe what he was hearing. "It is a great honor," Ambassador Lee said. "Few lesser species are chosen for the royal collection. The princess finds your species fascinating, particularly your quick thinking under pressure. She wishes to study you further." "Study me?" Tai-ho felt cold despite the heat. "You mean like a lab animal?" Commander Park winced. "That's not exactly. The princess prefers the term cultural representative." The ambassador cut in. "You will be well treated, given comfortable quarters, and asked to demonstrate human behaviors and abilities." "And if I refuse?" Tai-ho asked. The room went silent. General Yu finally spoke. "This is not a request, Staff Sergeant. It's a diplomatic arrangement. Refusing would cause an interstellar incident. I'm being given away." Tai-ho couldn't keep the anger from his voice. "Given an opportunity," Ambassador Lee corrected. "Many would envy your position. You will see wonders few humans ever witness." Tai-ho looked at his commanders, hoping for support, but found none. Their faces showed that the decision had already been made. "When do I leave?" he asked quietly. "Now," the ambassador said. "The princess's ship, the Starsong, awaits in orbit. Pack only personal items. Everything else will be provided." As Tai-ho turned to go, Commander Park stopped him. "I'm sorry, Kim. We had no choice." Tai-ho nodded stiffly. "I understand, sir. Duty comes first." But as he walked back to gather his few belongings, Tai-ho understood only one thing clearly. His life had just been traded away like a bargaining chip, and there was nothing he could do about it. Tai-ho stepped out of the transport onto the deck of the celestial ship. His mouth fell open. He had never seen anything so beautiful. The walls seemed to be made of light. The floor was smooth and warm under his feet. Soft music played from nowhere. The air smelled like flowers after rain. "This way, human," said one of the celestial guards. Tai-Ho followed, carrying his small bag of personal items. They walked down long hallways that changed color as they passed. Other celestials stopped to stare at him. Some looked curious. Others looked disgusted. Finally, they reached a large door that slid open silently. "These are your quarters," the guard said. Tai-Ho walked in and was surprised again. The room was huge. It had a bed bigger than his entire sleeping area back at the base. One wall was clear, showing the stars outside. There were plants, a desk, and even a small pool of water with colorful fish. But something felt wrong. Tai-Ho noticed small cameras in every corner. The door had no handle on the inside. And worst of all, one entire wall was made of clear glass, so anyone in the hallway could see in. "This isn't a room," Tai-Ho said. "It's a cage." The guard didn't answer. He just left, the door closing behind him. Tai-Ho sat on the bed, feeling angry and helpless. Hours passed. No one came. He was about to try the door when it finally opened. A human woman walked in. She was young, maybe 25, with long black hair. She wore a simple white dress with blue trim. "Hello," she said in Korean. "I'm Jae-Yun. I'm here to help you adjust." Tai-Ho was shocked to hear his language. "You're human. How are you here?" Jae-Yun smiled sadly. "My great-grandparents were taken as specimens, like you. I was born here." "Specimens," Tai-Ho repeated. "So I am just an animal in a zoo." "The Celestials don't see it that way," Jae-Yun said. "To them, it's an honor. They find other species fascinating, but not equal," Tai-Ho said. Jae-Yun didn't deny it. "The princess asked me to explain how things work here. You'll be given food, clothes, and anything else you need. You'll be asked to demonstrate human skills. Sometimes you'll be shown to important visitors. And if I refuse?" "No one refuses the princess," Jae-Yun said simply. "But she's not cruel. Just different. Celestials don't understand concepts like privacy or freedom the way we do." Tai-Ho walked to the glass wall. "Is there any way out of this?" "Make the best of it," Jae-Yun suggested. "I've heard the princess is actually interested in your thoughts, not just your physical abilities. That's rare." Before Tai-Ho could ask more questions, the door opened again. Both humans quickly bowed as two celestial guards entered, followed by a smaller figure. Tai-Ho looked up and saw her. Princess Era was younger than he expected, maybe the celestial equivalent of early 20s. Her skin was paler blue than the others, almost white. Her eyes were large and silver, but with hints of gold around the edges. She wore a simple dress that seemed to be made of flowing water. She was beautiful in an alien, untouchable way. "So," she said, her voice musical and light, "you are the human soldier who impressed me." Tai-Ho stood straight, like he would for an officer. "I am Staff Sergeant Tai-Ho Kim of the Galactic Defense Force." The princess smiled. "You won't need military titles here. You are now Tai-Ho of the Royal Collection." "I am still a soldier," he said firmly. Instead of being angry, Princess Era looked pleased. "Interesting. Most new specimens try to please me immediately." She walked around him slowly, studying him. "You saved your squad through quick thinking. Humans are not known for intelligence among my people. Tell me how you did it." Tai-Ho was surprised by the direct question. "I just did my job. I saw the situation and found the best way out." "Mom," the princess said. "And what do you think of your new home?" Tai-Ho met her eyes. "It's a beautiful cage, Your Highness." Jae-Yun gasped at his boldness. But Princess Era laughed, a sound like small bells. "Very interesting indeed. I think you will be my most fascinating specimen yet, Tai-Ho Kim." 3 weeks passed on the Starsong. Each day, Tai-Ho found himself put through tests. The princess wanted to see how fast he could run, how much he could lift, and how well he could solve puzzles. It felt like basic training all over again, except his drill sergeant had never watched him with such fascination. "You seem tired today," Jai-yun said as she brought his breakfast. Tai-ho looked up from the strange blue fruit he was eating. "The princess had me in combat simulations until midnight." Jai-yun sat across from him. Over the weeks, they had become friends. She was the only person who treated him like a human being, not a curious animal. "The princess is preparing for the grand assembly," Jai-yun explained. "Many important celestials will be there. She wants to show you off." Tai-ho frowned. "Like a new pet, like a valued possession," Jai-yun corrected. "To celestials, that's a compliment." Later that day, 2 celestial servants came to dress Tai-ho in formal clothes. The outfit was beautiful but uncomfortable, made of a material that changed color with his mood. "The princess requests your presence," one servant said. They led him to a massive hall filled with hundreds of celestials. The ceiling looked like the night sky, with stars that moved and changed. The walls were made of the same light material as the rest of the ship, but here they showed scenes from different worlds. Princess Era stood in the center of the room, surrounded by other celestials. When she saw Tai-ho, she waved him over. "Ah, here he is," she said proudly. "My human specimen." The celestials looked at him with curious eyes. Some leaned in too close, making Tai-ho step back. "He's smaller than I expected," said one celestial with dark blue skin. "But well-formed for such a primitive species," said another. They talked about him as if he wasn't there. Tai-ho clenched his fists but kept quiet. He saved his entire... A month after the Grand Assembly, the Star Song arrived at the celestial homeworld. Tai-ho stood at the window of his quarters, looking down at the planet. It was beautiful, covered in white cities that shimmered like pearls against blue oceans and purple forests. "It's time to go," Jai-yun said, entering his room with new clothes. "The princess wants you present for the royal procession." "What exactly is this procession?" Tai-ho asked as he changed into the formal outfit. "The princess will travel through the capital city to the palace," Jai-yun explained. "It's tradition whenever royal family members return from space." An hour later, Tai-ho found himself in a floating carriage made of crystal and light. Princess Era sat beside him, dressed in formal robes that caught the sunlight and broke it into rainbows. 8 royal guards floated around them on small platforms. "Stay close to me," Princess Era told him. "My people will want to see my new human." The procession began. They floated slowly down wide streets lined with thousands of celestials. The crowd made musical sounds instead of cheers. Tai-ho felt uncomfortable with so many eyes on him. "Your world is beautiful," Tai-ho said, trying to make conversation. "Do you miss Earth?" Princess Era asked. The question surprised him. She had never asked about his feelings before. "I miss the smell of rain on dirt," he said honestly, "and the sound of birds in the morning." Princess Era looked thoughtful. "Perhaps we could." A loud bang cut her off. One of the royal guards fell from his platform, a smoking hole in his chest. "Ambush!" Tai-ho shouted, his soldiers' instincts taking over. More shots came from buildings above them. 2 more guards fell. The others tried to shield the princess, but their defensive shields weren't working. "The weapons bypass our shields," a guard shouted in panic. Tai-ho didn't hesitate. He grabbed Princess Era and pulled her down to the floor of the carriage. "Stay down," he ordered, forgetting she was royalty. The princess looked shocked but obeyed. Tai-ho looked around quickly, assessing the situation like he would on a battlefield. The shots were coming from 3 different buildings. The remaining guards were falling one by one. The carriage had no cover except its low sides. "We need to move," Tai-ho told the princess. "This carriage is too exposed." "There," Princess Era pointed to a small side street. "That leads to the old temple. We can hide there." Tai-ho nodded. "When I say go, we run. Fast as you can." He counted to 3, then shouted, "Go!" They jumped from the carriage and ran. Shots hit the ground around their feet. Tai-Ho pushed the princess ahead of him, using his body to shield her. A shot grazed his arm, burning through his sleeve. He ignored the pain. They reached the small street and kept running. Behind them, Tai-Ho heard the sound of pursuers. The old temple was a stone building, different from the light structures of the rest of the city. They rushed inside and Tai-Ho quickly closed the heavy doors. "We need to block this," he said, looking around. He found a metal bar and slid it across the door. "Are you hurt?" Princess Era asked, seeing his burned arm. "It's nothing," Tai-Ho said. "We need to find another way out and get you to safety." The princess touched his arm gently. Her fingers glowed and the pain disappeared. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Put yourself between me and the weapons." Tai-Ho looked confused. "That's my job, to protect." "But I'm not your princess," she said. "I'm your captor." Before Tai-Ho could answer, the doors shook as someone tried to break in. "Later," he said. "First, we survive." They moved deeper into the temple, looking for another exit. Tai-Ho found a small window at the back. He looked out and saw royal guards approaching in the distance. "Help is coming," he told the princess. "We just need to hold out a little longer." Princess Era looked at him with new eyes. "You could have run, left me behind." Tai-Ho shook his head. "That's not who I am." The princess smiled. "No, I'm beginning to see that humans are not at all what we thought." 3 days after the attack, Tai-Ho sat in the royal gardens of the palace. His arm was fully healed thanks to celestial medicine. The gardens were peaceful, with strange purple trees and flowers that moved on their own. "May I join you?" Princess Era asked, walking toward him. Tai-Ho stood quickly and bowed. "Of course, Your Highness." Since the attack, he had been treated differently. The guards showed him respect. Servants bowed to him. Even his room had been changed. No more glass walls for people to look through. Princess Era sat on the bench beside him. She wore simple clothes today, not her royal robes. "The attackers have been caught," she said. "They were hired by a rival royal house." "I'm glad you're safe now," Tai-Ho said. The princess studied his face. "You saved my life. Our laws say I must give you a reward." Tai-Ho took a deep breath. "Then I ask for my freedom." Princess Era looked sad. "Is being here with me so terrible?" "Being owned is terrible," Tai-Ho said honestly, "even in a beautiful cage." The princess was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that shocked him. "I was never studying you as a specimen." Tai-Ho frowned. "What?" "That was what I told everyone, but it wasn't true," she explained. "My real mission was to assess if humans deserve greater standing in the galactic community." Tai-Ho stared at her. "I don't understand." Princess Era sighed. "For centuries, my people have believed humans are clever but simple creatures. We control what other species know about each other. We keep them separate and beneath us." "But why?" Tai-Ho asked. "Power," she said simply. "My father, the Emperor, thinks this is right. But I have doubted it for a long time." She stood and walked to a flower that changed color as she touched it. "So I asked to study other species myself, to see the truth with my own eyes." Tai-Ho followed her. "And what have you seen?" Princess Era turned to him. "I've seen courage, honor, and intelligence. I've seen you solve problems in ways my people would never think of. And I've seen you risk your life for someone who took away your freedom." "These are not just human traits," Tai-Ho said. "All people can be good or bad, no matter their species." "Exactly," Princess Era smiled. "That's what I'm beginning to understand." They walked through the garden together. For the first time, Tai-Ho felt the princess was talking to him as an equal. "You spoke of freedom," Princess Era said. "On your world, what does that mean?" Tai-Ho thought carefully. "It means the right to choose your own path, to speak your mind without fear, to be judged by what you do, not what you are. We have no word for this concept, the princess said, looking troubled. That's the problem. Taiho said, your people have amazing technology and long lives, but you're missing something important. Princess Era stopped walking. You are changing how I see everything, Taiho Kim. Before he could answer, Jia Yun ran into the garden, looking worried. Your Highness, she bowed quickly. The royal advisor, Hangil, is looking for you. He seems angry about something. Princess Era frowned. Hangil does not approve of my interest in humans. He thinks it will weaken our empire. Is he dangerous? Taiho asked. He has my father's ear, the princess said. And he hates change. Jia Yun stepped closer and whispered, I've heard rumors in the palace. Some say Hangil arranged the attack on your procession. Princess Era's eyes widened. That's a serious claim. We need proof, Taiho said, thinking like a soldier again. The princess nodded. Yes, but be careful. If Hangil is behind this, he won't stop until I'm dead. And anyone who supports me. For the first time, Taiho saw fear in her silver-gold eyes. I won't let anything happen to you, he promised. Princess Era touched his hand lightly. I believe you. And that, Taiho Kim, is the most surprising change of all. The next day, Taiho and Jia Yun met in a quiet corner of the palace kitchen. The celestial servants ignored them, thinking humans were not worth noticing. We need to find proof that Hangil was behind the attack, Taiho said quietly. Jia Yun nodded. I've worked in the palace for years. I know all the secret passages. We can use them to search his rooms. That's dangerous, Taiho warned. So is doing nothing, Jia Yun replied. The princess trusts you. I've never seen a celestial look at a human the way she looks at you. Taiho felt his face grow warm. She's just learning we're not as simple as her people think. Jia Yun smiled knowingly but said nothing. That night, they moved through dark, narrow passages behind the palace walls. Jia Yun led the way with a small light. These passages were built for servants, she explained. Celestials don't like to see the people who clean their rooms or cook their food. Finally, they'd reached a small door. This leads to Hangil's office, Jia Yun whispered. The office was dark and empty. Taiho used his military training to search quickly and carefully. He found nothing until he checked under the desk. There was a hidden panel. Inside was a small device. What is this? He asked, showing it to Jia Yun. Her eyes widened. It's a communication device, but this design is forbidden. It can't be tracked. Only criminals use these. They took the device and hurried back to the passages. In a safe spot, Taiho carefully turned it on. It showed a list of messages. The language was celestial, so Jia Yun read them. These are messages to the assassins, she said, her voice shaking. He gave them the codes to disable the royal guard shields. And look at this one. It's a new plan to poison the princess tonight. We need to warn her now, Taiho said. They rushed through the passages toward the princess's rooms. Suddenly, an alarm sounded throughout the palace. What's happening? Taiho asked. Jia Yun looked afraid. Someone must have found Hangil's device is missing. When they reached the princess's chambers, guards blocked the door. No one enters by royal order, one guard said. But we have to see the princess. She's in danger. Taiho insisted. The princess is not seeing anyone, the guard replied coldly. Especially humans. Taiho and Jia Yun had no choice but to retreat to the passages. Something's wrong, Jia Yun said. Those weren't her usual guards. They found another passage that led to a small viewing window into the princess's room. Through it, they could see Princess Era sitting stiffly in a chair. Hangil stood over her. Your interest in humans has gone too far, he was saying. The emperor is very disappointed. My father would never believe I betrayed our people, Princess Era said firmly. Hangil smiled cruelly. He already does. I showed him proof that you were planning to reveal our secrets to the humans. Now you are confined to your rooms until he decides your punishment." "That's a lie," the princess said angrily. "It doesn't matter," Hangil replied. "Soon you will have a tragic accident, like the one you almost had during the procession." Taiho felt cold with anger. He wanted to break through the wall and attack Hangil, but that would only get them all killed. "We need a better plan," he whispered to Jiayun. "Wait, look," Jiayun pointed. Princess Era had noticed them at the viewing window. Her face showed no reaction, but she tapped her finger on her chair 3 times, a signal. "She knows we're here," Taiho said, "and she has a plan." When Hangil finally left, guards remained at the princess's door. "What now?" Jiayun asked. Taiho thought hard. "We have proof of Hangil's crime, but we can't reach the princess or the emperor. We need to tell everyone what's happening." "How?" Jiayun asked. "No one will listen to humans." Taiho smiled grimly. "On Earth, when people in power do bad things, we expose them. Does the palace have a communication system that reaches the whole city?" Jiayun's eyes lit up. "The Royal Broadcast Center. It's used for announcements to all Celestials. And I know how to get there." "The broadcast center is on the top floor of the East Tower," Jiayun explained as they moved through the passages. "But there will be guards." "How many?" Taiho asked, thinking like a soldier again. "Usually 2 or 3. But with the alarm, maybe more." They reached a small door that led to the East Tower. Taiho peeked out. 4 guards stood in the hallway. "Too many to fight," he whispered. Jiayun pointed to another passage. "This way. There's a service lift for cleaning staff." The service lift was small and dirty. It moved silently up the tower. When the doors opened, they were in a small room filled with cleaning supplies. "The broadcast center is through that door," Jiayun said. "But we need a plan to get past the guards." Taiho looked around the room and smiled when he saw some cleaning uniforms. "I have an idea." 5 minutes later, they pushed a cleaning cart into the hallway. Both wore the blue uniforms of palace cleaners. They kept their heads down as they passed the guards. "Stop," said one guard. "No cleaning now. The center is closed." "Emergency cleaning," Jiayun said without looking up. Royal Advisor Hangil ordered it. "Something about a special announcement." The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. "Be quick." Once inside the broadcast center, Taiho quickly locked the door. The room was filled with strange equipment. Screens showed different parts of the city. "How does this work?" Taiho asked. Jiayun studied the controls. "I've seen this used during royal announcements. We need to connect Hangil's device to show the proof, then activate the main broadcast." Outside, the guards were getting suspicious. They knocked on the door. "Hurry," Taiho urged. Jiayun connected the device to the main console. The screens flickered, then showed Hangil's messages planning the assassination and the princess's imprisonment. "Now we need to explain what people are seeing," Jiayun said. "But they won't listen to humans." The door shook as the guards tried to break in. "We need the princess," Taiho said suddenly. "Can we broadcast to her room?" Jiayun's fingers flew over the controls. "Yes, there's a screen in her chambers, if she sees us." The small screen lit up, showing Princess Era in her room. She looked up, surprised to see them. "Your Highness," Taiho said quickly, "we found proof of Hangil's crimes. We're in the broadcast center. The whole city can see you. Tell them the truth." Understanding flashed in the princess's eyes. She stood straight and began to speak in a clear, royal voice. Her words appeared as text on the screens for Taiho to understand. "People of the Celestial Empire, a great crime has been committed. My royal advisor, Hangil, has betrayed us all. The evidence you see is real. Hangil tried to have me killed because I learned the truth, that our empire has been built on lies." The princess paused, then continued with more passion. For centuries, we have believed other species are beneath us. We have kept them separate, controlled what they know about each other, and treated them as lesser beings. But I have lived with a human. I have seen his courage, his honor, and his wisdom. Humans, and all species, deserve respect and freedom. The door to the broadcast center crashed open. Guards rushed in, followed by Hangil himself. "Turn it off," he shouted. "This is treason." But it was too late. Screens all over the city showed the princess's face and Hangil's secret messages. Citizens were gathering in the streets, looking up at the broadcasts with shock and anger. "It's over, Hangil," Taiho said, standing tall despite the guards surrounding him. Hangil's face twisted with hate. "Kill them both. Now." The guards raised their weapons. Taiho stepped in front of Jia-yun, ready to protect her to the end. Suddenly, a new voice echoed through the room. "Stop." Everyone froze. On the main screen was not just Princess Era, but an older celestial with a crown of light. The Emperor himself had joined the broadcast. "Father," Princess Era said in surprise. "I have heard everything," the Emperor said gravely, "and I have seen the evidence." Hangil fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, I can explain." "Silence," the Emperor commanded. "Guards, arrest Royal Advisor Hangil for treason and attempted murder." The guards lowered their weapons and turned to Hangil. As Hangil was taken away, the Emperor looked at Taiho through the screen. "Human soldier," he said, "it seems we have much to learn from your kind." 1 week after Hangil's arrest, Taiho stood in the Great Hall of the Celestial Palace. The room was filled with important people from all over the galaxy. Humans, Voidborn, and many other species stood together with Celestials for the first time in history. Taiho wore a new uniform, half-human military, and half-celestial royal design. Jia-yun stood beside him, smiling proudly. "I never thought I would see a day like this," she said. The crowd went quiet as the Emperor entered, followed by Princess Era. The Emperor wore his crown of light, and the princess was dressed in her finest robes. They took their places on 2 great chairs at the front of the hall. "People of the galaxy," the Emperor said, his voice strong and clear. "For too long, we Celestials have placed ourselves above all others. We believed our long lives and advanced technology made us superior. Today, that changes." The Emperor stood and walked to where Taiho waited. "This human soldier has shown us the error of our ways. Through his courage, honor, and wisdom, we have learned that greatness comes in many forms." The Emperor turned to the crowd. "From this day forward, all species will be treated with respect and dignity in our empire. No more will we keep knowledge from each other. No more will we treat others as lesser beings." A cheer rose from the crowd, loudest from the non-celestials, who had never before been treated as equals. "As my first act under this new law," the Emperor continued, "I appoint my daughter, Princess Era, as ambassador to Earth. She will lead our efforts to rebuild relations with humanity, not as patrons, but as friends and equals." Princess Era stepped forward. "And I ask Staff Sergeant Taiho Kim to join me as my advisor on this mission." Taiho bowed deeply. "I would be honored, Your Highness." The princess smiled. "Not Your Highness anymore. Between us, I am just Era." After the ceremony, Taiho and Princess Era walked in the royal gardens. The strange flowers seemed to bow as they passed. "You could return to Earth now, if you wished," Princess Era said softly. "Your freedom is yours." Taiho stopped walking. "Is that what you want?" "I want what you want," she replied. "That is what I have learned from you. True respect means allowing others to choose their own path." Taiho smiled. "My path, I think, is with you." The princess's eyes shimmered with gold. "Because of duty." "Because of something more," Taiho said. "Something I never expected to find here." Princess Era moved closer. "There are still many who think a celestial and a human could never truly understand each other. Then we will prove them wrong," Taiho said. Just as we proved them wrong about human courage and intelligence. It will not be easy, she warned. Changing the thoughts of an entire galaxy takes time. Nothing worth doing is ever easy, Taiho replied. The next day, they boarded the Star Song. Jia came too, as the ship's new head of human relations. Many others joined them, scientists, diplomats, and curious celestials who wanted to learn about Earth. As the ship prepared to leave, Taiho stood at the window, looking out at the celestial homeworld. Having second thoughts, Princess Era asked, joining him. Remembering first ones, Taiho said. When I first came aboard this ship, I was a prisoner, a specimen. And now I am an advisor to a princess, a bridge between worlds. He turned to her, and maybe something more. Princess Era's hand found his. Her touch was cool and light, like morning dew. Definitely something more, she said softly. The Star Song lifted off, heading for Earth. As the stars streaked by, Taiho thought about his strange journey. He had been taken from his home as a present for an alien princess. Now he was helping to change the galaxy. What are you thinking about? Era asked. The future, Taiho said. Our future. As Earth came into view, blue and beautiful in the distance, Taiho knew this was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning. The end.